How's it going, everybody? This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is what this show is here for. It is here to answer all of your questions about politics, regardless if they are complicated or simple, regardless of if you are left wing or right wing, regardless of if you are also a politics expert or if you are new to politics and just trying to figure out the basics. This is the show for you. This is not a fighting show. This is not a show where people yell at each other. This is not a show where I call people up and call them stupid for having different political opinions than me. Yeah, this is not that show. So we believe in engaging in good faith at the Ask Me Anything About Politics show. And so if you got a question, regardless of if it's is only the kind of question that a MAGA person would ask or only the kind of person that a left wing person would ask, all good faith questions will be given good faith answers. I say all, but sometimes if the check gets a little heavy, it's more of a lottery situation where, if you get picked to get your question read, then you're one of the lucky ones. So yeah, any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat, guys. No such thing as a dumb question. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. I am not here to yell at people or call people stupid or uninformed. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. And politics is really weird right now. It's very difficult to figure out what's actually going on because there's a lot of misinformation and propaganda out there. It seems as though it is happening intentionally to confuse people about what's actually going on. And so, if you are curious about what's really going on, this is a good show for you because that's what we do. We get into the provable facts, we get into the things that are not up for debate, the things that we can all agree or that we should all agree are actually what is going on in our country and in our government at the moment. So, any questions at all, throw them in the chat and I can get to answering your questions. Tap says, do you believe biological males who identify as women should be allowed in women only spaces? So it's an interesting question, Tap, because the way you phrase it, it makes it seem like, you know, men are identifying as women just so that they can get into women's sports or women's bathrooms. And that is largely not happening. Even men that transition into women who then go on to compete in sports, they are not like universally dominating. I don't think there's ever even been a male to female trans athlete who has medaled in the Olympics. Where that's not what the narrative is. But I do think that we need to make space for this category of person that we are discovering, exists and is feeling excluded in society. So, how are the ways that we are going to do that? It's an open question. And I think that the right of this country tend to oversimplify it to say that the left wants to put grown men in your little daughter's bathroom, or the left wants, fucking Mike Tyson to punch your daughter in the face in a boxing match or some shit like that. And that is just, it's just stupid. It's not accurate. So yeah, how do we accommodate without making women feel, unsafe? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we solve that problem, but I do know that the way you don't solve it is by demonizing trans people and throwing them under the bus. Tap says because they're not allowed in the Olympics. That is inaccurate. Blue Eyed Bell says, is the economy as bad as TikTok is making it sound? It's pretty bad. A lot of the indicators are bad. The unemployment is up, prices are up, inflation is up. The economy seems to be slowing. We are looking at inflation, recession, high unemployment. Yeah, none of these are good. None of these are good markers. Right. Kezia Wallace says, what sites do you recommend for me, a 17-year-old, if I want to learn about politics and how it all works? So there are a couple of things that I recommend for you, Kazia. First is you want to avoid all right-wing media. So that's Fox News, Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, Breitbart, OAN. We have the data on this. It is not up for debates. Right-wing news sources are significantly less accurate and reliable than every other news source out there. Some data says that it is as little as 22% accurate. So that's number one. Number two is the best thing you can do is get your news from a bunch of different sources to try to counteract any potential bias that you might be experiencing. So you should read, the New York Times, but also the Guardian UK, because it's valuable to get a perspective on American politics from outside of the country. And the Associated Press, or MSNBC, Crooked Media, all of those, biases can kind of like balance each other out. But again, just avoid right-wing media like the plague. And if you want to get started on something that's simple, I would recommend a daily news kind of like roundup podcast, like What a Day. I enjoy What a Day. I think it's pretty good as far as like giving you, a little bit of everything that's going on. Alrighty, let's see here. Mia's LV Adventures, great to see you again. I think Trump wants it this way, so if we go into a recession, him and his rich friends can buy everything. So there is some accuracy to that, Mia, but it's also simpler than that. Like when the economy is bad, people struggle, people become desperate, and desperate people kind of like lean into authoritarian regimes. When you are desperate, you just want somebody to tell you, I will fix it, even if that person is a proven liar with a proven terrible track record. Sometimes people get, upset enough to protest or riot or loot, which, means for Trump that he gets to send in the National Guard and militarize American cities. And if things get bad enough, then he can cancel elections. Or even if they don't get bad enough, he can cancel elections. It's a whole bunch of bad that Trump does not give a shit about. Trump and his Republican buddies do not give a shit about trying to actually solve the problem. Shork says, is Democrats' unwillingness to challenge neoliberalism what led to Trump? There are a million things that led to Trump. I would not put Democrats' unwillingness to challenge neoliberalism as one of the things, because the Democratic Party has been challenging neoliberalism, and it's a big tent. So there are people that are more progressive and people that are more centrist. I find that people tend to overhype the mistakes of the Democratic Party. They say that because Democrats did X, Y, or Z, then it's the reason why, blank problem exists. And I find that to be regularly hyperbolic and unfair. Alrighty, let's see here. Meat Soda says, do you think they use trans people as the new scapegoat to distract us from other problems? 100% Meat Soda. Alrighty. DC Cowboy says, anyone possibly able to bless me with a small meal? If anybody wants to give that person food, do it. Alrighty. Leader scored says, thoughts on people who argue for a living like Harry, Dean, Charlie, etc. So I think there's a difference between left-wing debate bros and right-wing debate bros. So there's two questions there. It's like, what is the value of those people, and also what is the value of just the format? I think debates are stupid. Debates are dumb. People are just memorizing talking points and trying to own the other person, and I don't think that's productive. I think engaging in good faith political discussions is productive, but here's the other thing: is like debates are kind of popular, and so I kind of am for anything that gets young people more interested and engaged in politics. And people like Dean and Hassan are really popular, and so maybe that is a good stepping stone for people to get involved. And additionally, what I would want to specify, though, is that the left-wing debaters, they are the ones who are actually providing meaningful rhetoric and discussion to the debate sphere, because the right-wing guys are just lying. Like Charlie Kirk has a pants on fire rating from PolitiFact. And winning a debate with Charlie Kirk is just if you have memorized every single fact that exists and you can call it all of his lies, that's the only way that you can win. And then there's zero repercussions for him getting caught in all those lies. So then he just moves on to the next college and hopes that somebody doesn't catch him in all of his lies, So yeah, there's a difference. There's a difference between, the content creators, what side of the aisle they are on. All right. Drew Abbott says, if you're in America, do you believe the party system is destroying the country? I think that there are problems with the party system, but I think that people overhype the problems with the two-party system and say that that's the cause of everything. People will say, I'm so tired of, just like two bad options. And that is the fault of the two-party system. And it's like, that's not the fault of the two-party system. That's the fault of the fact that not enough people vote in the primary. And so the people that vote in the primary get the primary candidate they want, and then everybody else is upset about that, Political Mess says, do you think the uniparty exists? What do you mean by that? Z Garde, good to see you as well. Looks like boob emoji says, you do nothing for society but complain about one man. What do you know about politics? Well, then you don't know what this live stream is about, because I don't just talk about Trump on this live stream. I talk about Republicans and Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson, the entire right-wing sphere of pieces of shit I go after. And what do I know about politics? A lot, stick around and listen. Mr. Franken says, have you heard about the new Oath Keepers? No, I have not. Jim Pimpin says, the guys on my side are right, and the guys on the other side are all liars, and I will not expand. I did expand, Jim Pimpin. PolitiFact found that they lie a lot. They give him a pants on fire, Jim Pimpin. Why? Says, but you do nothing for society. I mean, I fuck your mom. That's pretty good for society. Otherwise, she'd be so upset that she would become a mass shooter. Political Mess says, where both parties essentially are the same party and only care about themselves and not the purple. Well, I don't agree that exists currently. Like, the Democratic Party is wildly different than the Republican Party. The outcomes are different based on who's in charge. The politicians are different. The platforms are different, Shaken Blake says, what, in your opinion, would fix housing affordability? I think subsidies for affordable house building. Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I worry that we need a stopgap measure until those houses are built. And so something to take care of the people who are currently unhoused. But yeah, building more homes has got to be priority number one, making sure that those homes are affordable. And then there are just like sort of like bigger issues that were kind of like also part of the problem of, of the current housing shortage of, extremely greedy landlords, private equity buying up single family homes, rich people destroying construction projects because they don't want other people in their neighborhoods. Breaking up monopolies, taxing the rich, like all that stuff would help, I think. Alrighty. Short says, are right-wing points in general easy to digest, even if they're shallow? I mean, I think that they're designed that way. They're designed to seem like they make sense, to seem like they are common sense, but at the same time, they are bullshit. It is completely shallow. It is Joe Pesci in, My Cousin Vinny showing the card trick of about how hollow all of their talking points are, All right. Kyle Ashley says, I'm running for Congress in Virginia. Good for you. DK says, let's tax the poor. No, thank you. Sherry says, how do we get corporate interest out of politics? Short version is you got to vote for Democrats. Democrats are the party that wants to get money and corporate interest out of politics, and Republicans' platform and their legislating history is putting more money into politics. All right. Ivy says, do you think the U.S. is on the brink of a civil war? I do not. I think we're much closer to an authoritarian militarized state than a civil war. Z Garde says, Airbnb has helped destroy the housing market as well. Yeah, they're definitely part of it. DK, congratulations. You are out of here. I'm tired of your bits. I don't have a lot of patience today, guys. User a bunch of numbers says, answer me. I didn't see your question. Slothgen says, why does the left hate Reagan's warning of communism so much that they delete anything about it? I don't know that the left is deleting anything that Reagan said about communism, so I kind of reject the premise of your question, Slothgen. User a bunch of numbers says, why are you answering me? Because I didn't see a question. Shaken Blake says, how do you feel about eliminating the income tax and just the sales tax on non-essential goods? So eliminating the income tax and just relying on a sales tax would be a regressive tax system, meaning that poor and middle-class Americans and working-class Americans would be paying more in taxes than rich people, because those taxes mean a lot more to poor people. It is the difference between, a 10 grand tax bill for somebody that makes 30 grand a year and a 10 grand tax bill for somebody that makes $5 million a year, So yeah, I am not in favor of that. Toast says, what do you think about the First Amendment? I'm for it. Nofo says, are all politicians crooks? No. And the people that say that they are all crooks are actually giving cover for the worst ones. So it is beneficial, it is more productive to recognize that there are good politicians and bad politicians, that there are corrupt politicians and non-corrupt politicians, and that there are good political parties and bad political parties, and good platforms and bad platforms, and good policies and bad policies. All right. Carmine says, "Can you explain the party switch in Star Wars terms?" Oh, that's a really funny question. Let's see here. I can't because I don't have a good version of racism for the Empire to have switched on or some shit like that. I don't know. Right, political messes. The party switch didn't happen. That is blatantly untrue. Toast 3D says, "What do you think the purpose of the First Amendment is?" Everyone has their own definition these days. It is so that the government cannot punish you for the things that you say, and that you should be able to practice any religion that you want. I believe freedom of religion is part of the First Amendment as well. Dave Denton says, "Is talking politics becoming easier or more difficult to talk about on stage as a comedian?" I think it's probably easier because more people know what's going on, and so it's not as niche. Political Mess says, "Blatantly untrue, like three politicians switch." All right, Political Mess, congratulations. I don't care for liars on my channel. No Foo says, "Can't yell fire without a fire." What does that mean? Shaken Blake says, "How far left would you say you are?" I'm a progressive, and so I'm not so far left that I believe that the best idea would be just to destroy the government. But I also believe that we need to be more aggressive about helping poor and middle class Americans and not be so incrementalist as the centrists. Marie, good to see you again. Alrighty. User a whole bunch of numbers says, "Free Palestine." I agree with that. User a bunch of numbers says, "What's your opinion on the Muslims in Europe?" The same as Muslims everywhere else, that they should be able to practice their religion wherever they are currently living. Right. Dave Denton says, "Yes, go progressive." Yay. Thank you. Religion, speech, petition, assembly, press. Yeah, all of that stuff is very important. Dan Blackroyd, excellent to see you again. The GOAT is in the chat. Jay the Turtle says, "But we are seeing people getting prosecuted for their beliefs." That is accurate, Jay the Turtle. It's almost like the Trump administration is violating the First Amendment. Isn't that weird how that's happening? User a bunch of numbers says, "They are touching kids and women's and stuff." I don't know who you're referring to, but your spelling is terrible, and I doubt that you are here in good faith, so you're out of here. Stoogie Politics says, "Do you think Dems should let a government shutdown happen when the deadline comes?" So that is a very difficult question. And before I get into my opinion on it, I just want to state very clearly that the Democrats are stuck between a rock and a hard place. There is no good option available. And so any Democrat that is coming down on one side of that or the other, that is not evidence of them being terrible. It is evidence of them having a belief in what the best of two bad situations possibly is. So I reject this narrative that if we allow the shutdown to happen, that we are just letting Trump take over the government, and I reject the narrative that if we negotiate on a spending deal, then we are folding to the Republican Party, because we have no power. Democrats have no power to do anything but one of two terrible options in this scenario. And it's a difficult choice. It's a very difficult choice. I don't know what the best option is. I think I lean a little bit closer towards shutting the government down, but I'm not going to die on that hill. You know what I mean? Right. Nofu says, "Will the tariffs work?" The tariffs are currently not working. We are currently in a trade war, America versus everybody, and weirdly, America is losing. It is increasing inflation. It is decreasing supply. It is, it is stagnating our economy. The bond market is cratering. The value of the dollar is cratering. People are spending more money to get less. Yeah, it's not working. It's not working at all. Marie says, "Do you think the flotilla will work?" I mean, it will work in the sense that it is a way to get more attention to the humanitarian crisis that is currently happening. Right. Electromagnetic Energy says they are powerless. They are powerless because we made them powerless. We did not elect enough of them to actually have any power. Grim77 says, "Do you really think solely relying on tax from goods is not viable? Maybe income-based IEDs?" I do not believe that it is viable, particularly because, it has nothing to do with the amount of money that's being brought in. It has everything to do with burdening the people who need the burden the least, and relieving the burden on the people that could handle spending more. Right, Lauren, good to see you again. Carmine says, what's the point of denying the party switch when the baddies are doing the bad things right now? Misinformation, propaganda, trying to muddy the waters, pick your poison. It is just bad faith actors trying to skew the political zeitgeist in a way that is beneficial for them and harmful for everybody else. Kate, I am a superwoman, says, why isn't that monster dragged out of the White House by his stupid toupee and thrown in a cell? Well, Kate, because the citizens of America decided to either vote for Republicans or to not vote at all. And so when that happens, the Republican Party sweeps everything, and they are in control of the judiciary, the White House, the executive, the legislative, meaning that the only people who have the power to hold Trump accountable are all Republicans. And so they are either on board with all of the corruption and unconstitutional behavior and authoritarianism and fascist shit and racism, or they're too scared of Trump and his increasingly violent base to stand up to him. And I think both of those are a massive indictment on the entire Republican Party, regardless of which side of that fence they fall on. And I think it is because of that we should all be putting in 40 hours a week trying to make sure that every Republican politician, from president to dog catcher, loses their election coming up. Unelect every Republican, guys. It is, I think, priority one, and I think it is necessary in order to teach the Republican Party that this shit will not stand. The reason why the Republican Party has gotten so extreme over the past decade is because they have not suffered electoral consequences for doing terrible things, and so they're like raptors in cages, testing the cages to see what they can get away with. And what they're discovering is that because the billionaire class is on their side, they can get away with anything. K Himchi says, is the CCP our biggest threat to our democracy and dollar? I don't know. Absolutely not. I do not think so. I think that, China is kicking our ass right now, specifically because Trump is letting them kick our ass. He has handicapped us. We went into this game with a straight flush, and somehow we only ended up with, a queen high card. And it is a full self-own, completely unforced error on our parts. The biggest threat to America and to the value of the dollar is not China, it is the Republican Party. Right, Austin says, what is hummus? Chickpeas, pureed with a whole bunch of spices and shit like that. Krim says, the BRICS nations is a threat, don't lie. I mean, they are a threat, but they wouldn't be a threat if we had a better president who actually was competent. Youngzo says, why is there so many conservative Trump supporter women? You think they'd not want that? I think it's just, people are part of their communities. And so whether they are male, female, gay, straight, black, brown, white, whatever, if you are in a community of people that is, perpetuating misinformation and propaganda, then you're going to fall for it, all right. K Himchi says, it doesn't matter who the president is, the brakes is aimed to destroy our dollar. Yeah, but we could be competitive against them if we had a president who is not incompetent. And it 100% matters who the president is, K Himchi. So, yeah. Austin says, I support hummus. I also support hummus. Chrissy says, we're just tired of the left being soft on crime. The left is not soft on crime. The left is actually trying to solve crime. The right is not. The way that you solve crime is that you solve poverty. That's the reason why people do crimes, or the reason why people grow up with the kind of moral flexibility of thinking that doing crimes is okay. It is all a consequence of people being brought up in the trauma of being poor, of not knowing where their next meal is going to come from, of not feeling that their life has any value. So what difference does it make if I am living on the streets or in jail, enforcement, funding police, stricter sentencing is not solving crime. We already have that in America. We have more police, more well-funded police, more prisons, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not pejorative, more punishments, harsher punishments. If that shit worked, it would have worked already. We would be the most crimeless country in the world. But because we never give Democrats enough leeway to actually do the work of solving, crime, then we don't see crime go down. you know? Let's see here. Chrissy says, yeah, the guy who that stabbed the woman on the train, he was just trying to get fed, right? Chrissy, that guy had some severe mental problems. And I mean, honestly, I can tell. Keep lying. It's all the left nose. Yeah, you're not here in good faith. You don't give a shit what I have to say. You're just here to throw stones. All right, take it easy. I fucked your mom. Goodbye. All right. Das Mystical says, so wait, what kind of economic system do you support? I support a mixed model like they have in Norway, like they have in Sweden, like they have in Canada. More socialism, more communism, but still you can have a little capitalism, left over as a treat. Maurizio Quezada says, do you think we should pack the courts if liberals get in office? 100%. It is not packing the courts at this point. It will be rebalancing the courts because the Republican Party has packed the courts like hardcore. And so if we got in there and we started flooding the zone with better judges, that would not be packing the courts. That would be rebalancing the courts. All right. B. Moore says they had the House and Senate from 2008 to 2012 and 2022. It got worse by far. So I don't know why you think that who has Congress is the person that does all the things. B. Moore. There's a big difference between having the House and the Senate, having the presidency in the House and the Senate, having a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Like what you just said was specifically cherry-picked data to prove your point, B. Moore. Like that is not an accurate thing that you just said. Right. Krim77 says the countries you named all have small populations. Their data is misleading. So Krim, let me ask you something. Have you ever lived in an apartment with like roommates and like you share a cable bill or something like that? Question mark says you lie. Well, that's the example of the kind of combo that gets you blocked. Yeah, Krim. Let me know, Krim. Have you ever lived in an apartment with other people and you like share utility bills or anything like that? Share the cable bill, share the internet bill, stuff like that? Turnip says, what happened to all the insane previously in mental hospitals? Joined the Democratic Party. Wow, asked and answered. Sorry, Turnip. Fucked your bomb. Alrighty. What do we got here? All right. Just Mr. Call. Shake and Blake says, but some of the most blue cities with the most blue policies have the most crime per capita. That is actually inaccurate, Shake and Blake. The cities with the highest crime and highest violent crime are all in red states. Right. Keyhole says, would packing mean adding judges or replacing judges to any court? I mean, if we had enough Senate Democrats to actually impeach some of these judges and remove them, I think 100% we should. But failing that, we should just, add judges. Jolie Cake says, money is the only thing most Americans care about. Campaign on the money. Let's see here. Krim77 says, yes, it's a communal thing, but like I said, higher population, higher variables. Yeah, but here's the thing, man. If you are sharing the electric bill with one other person, you are using less energy than if you had 10 people, but 10 people spreading out the financial burden of everybody's electric bill means that everybody's bill goes down. So having a larger country doesn't make it harder for us to have more socialism and communism. It actually makes it easier because we have more places where we can spread out the inequities of that system. So yeah, I don't buy that argument one tick. That is the fact that America is so large that we can't have, a more mixed model system, Ali Bay says, I got unalive threats on Twitter for stating that not having pew-pews would stop school pew-pews. Well, leave Twitter, guys. I don't know. Vince says, Democrat-run cities in red states. Why is it that Democrat-run cities in Democrat-run states don't have extremely high and violent crime, but Democrat-run cities in red states do have really high crime and violent crime? It's weird. It's weird to me that you think that the key is Democratic mayors, even though Democratic mayors in Democratic governor states are not having extremely high crime and violence. So pretty weird math that you're doing there, Vince. Gingy says they're just repeating what KK Carolyn Levitt said. That's pretty funny. Right. El Jefe says, should I trust my farts? You got to be careful with every fart because it could be a shart. The Menace says, trying to understand why is Trump doing the whole tariff thing? So there are a bunch of different motivations behind Trump's tariffs. And so I'll just like name as many as I can remember right now, the Venice, but there's a lot, So like he likes prices going up and making poor people desperate because desperate people help his authoritarian, leanings, his authoritarian goals. Also, blanket tariffs mean that companies can petition him or bribe him to exempt them from those tariffs. And we are seeing this. We're seeing it happen right now. There's a reason why him and his family are now $5 billion richer. It is because a lot of companies are bribing him to exempt them from the tariffs that he is putting on. It is separating us from our allies, which is also beneficial to authoritarian regimes. When everybody gets to be the enemy, it makes everybody more insular and want to cut off America. But yeah, it makes people desperate. It ruins the economy. When you crash the economy, the people that have the money can then buy up all the shit at cheaper costs. And so him and his billionaire buddies will be able to own even more of America. Right. Critical 319 says explain Baltimore, Chicago, New York, Philly, all amazing states that have lower crime rates than cities in red states. Alrighty, Krim says you should let some calls in, hear people's opinions. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Krim. Let's see here. Scrolling down to the bottom, Ray Riker says crash the economy like they did shutting down small businesses. Ray Riker, who shut down small businesses? Are you thinking about during COVID when Trump was president? It seems like that might be what you're referring to. Is when Trump was president and he had to shut down the economy because COVID was running rampant because he did not handle that pandemic smartly. Krim77 says, what if he is cutting off all allies and the like because he sees a war on the horizon? Well, then cutting off our allies would not assist in that at all. It wouldn't insulate America from any negative consequences. It would only weaken the position of half of that conflict. And when one party in a conflict that wants to go to war, like Russia, is way stronger than their opposition, then that incentivizes them to go into war. There's a reason why he chose to start with Ukraine, which was not a NATO nation, is because they were weaker. NATO countries are stronger. Right. Red Right Han says, talk about the Hyundai ICE raid. It was so fucking stupid. South Korea sent over a bunch of people to teach us how to make better electric car batteries, and then ICE just fucking arrested them all and put them in fucking shackles like they're some violent criminals. Like, what the fuck? Now we have ruined our relationship with South Korea. We have ruined our relationship with these technicians who are teaching us how to do better technology here in America. Yeah, we are threatening our economy, our allies, our position on the world stage. Yeah, it's so fucking stupid. It was so fucking stupid. Keyhole says, do you think Trump will try to run for president in 28? Absolutely, 100%. He's going to try to stay in office until he dies. I don't know how he's going to try, but he will try. Taryn says, now that Mexicans are leaving, how fast will we make America great? Never, I guess, Taryn. Getting rid of immigrants is only hurting us. It is not helping one lick. Krim says, some lady reported them. She said she gave the U.S. 450 jobs, losing 9K jobs and billions. I don't know anything about that. Doesn't really seem. I'm not even sure what you're trying. The point you're trying to make. The policy poll says, "Hey, I saw you on my alt. Great to see you made on my political page as well. Thank you, Policy Pulse." Right. Red Red Han says, "I'm Georgia, and that just cost us 8,000 jobs. And Korea has committed $3 billion investment in U.S. Lost both. Yeah, it was so fucking stupid. This is a one example of the myriad of ways that ICE is fucking us. ICE is fucking ruining this country, along with Trump and the Republican Party. Like, they're all fucking working together to ruin this country. Ron says, we have plenty of legal Hispanics. Well, that doesn't stop ICE from fucking detaining or deporting them, Free Palestine says, Trump will destroy America and the world. Yeah, he's on the way. Not Drake 2020 says, who will win NYC mayoral election? I believe that Mamdani has like an insurmountable lead, Rebel Intellectual says, so are the Democrats. The Democrats are actively not trying to ruin America or the country. Policy Poll says, do you have any knowledge on the 35 or so hospitals at risk of closing in Kentucky because of cuts? I don't know about those specific hospitals, but that is one of the consequences of the drastic cuts that Doge and the beautiful bill, the big fucking bill are having is that rural hospitals, rural drug treatment centers, there's going to be massive cuts to the kind of care that people are going to be able to get going forward. Bearded G says Democrats are the problem, no doubt. That's not a question, so you are out of here. I do not care if you have different political opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Krim knows what's up. Krim and I disagree on things, but they're still asking questions. When will Americans understand that immigrants provide the silver plate life that we all enjoy? I mean, I don't know if that's the best framing for it. It makes it seem like they should be happy to be our servants. But it is a fact that immigrants are a net positive on this country. Rebel Intellectual says, you don't think both sides are the problem? No, I do not. I think that there are problems with the Democratic Party, but the problems of the Republican Party far outweigh them. It is the difference between a person who is stealing a pack of gum and a person who is stabbing you in the throat. There's just like there's no contest as to which is the worst political party, which has the worst politicians and platforms, which has the worst outcomes both on the federal and state level. All right, Kinscap says, how hard is it going to be to get vaccinations covered now? I don't know. I think it's going to be state specific. But if you're worried about that, call your pharmacy, call your doctor, and see what will be available to you. You know, Rebel Intellectual says you're bugging. That's not an argument. Rebel Intellectuals, ask a question, or I'm going to boot you. Red Right Han says, has Trump done anything on the last 6 months that you support? No, I wouldn't say that he's done nothing, but I also don't think that it is productive for me to find something nice about the dude that is stabbing me in the throat. Like, do I really have to say that the dude stabbing me in the throat smells nice, or something like that? Just a Drifter says, Democrats aren't left. Yes, they are. Dino Max says, sorry for all the questions, just wondering why the U.S. won't adopt universal health care. Thanks. Dino Mac, don't apologize for the questions. The questions is what we're doing here, So why won't the U.S. adopt universal health care? The reason why is because the billionaire class does not want America to have universal health care because they make money off of insurance, health insurance companies, and it is valuable for them for people to be desperate and to not know if they can afford to, get their appendix fixed or whatever. If we elected the kind of politicians who would stand up to the billionaire class, aka the Democratic Party, if we elected more Democrats, then we could 100% get universal health care. Dino Max says, in theory, could it work, though? It doesn't need to be in theory. It's working in every other industrialized nation besides America. Garrett McCoppin says, who's going to clean Trump's toilet if he deports all the immigrants? What a weird question. Dino Mac, yes, it could work. Garmine says, could you estimate when the farmer struggling right now will need a bailout? I mean, I would not even begin to start to figure out when that is. But yeah. I mean, I'm worried for everybody, including farmers in red states. Red Right Han says, do you think Trump did the bad thing to the 12-year-old girl? I don't know why somebody would do what the woman did if he did not. Like, I don't know why you would go through all the trouble of suing him for that if he did not do that. And there's a lot of substantive, circumstantial evidence to suggest that he was intimately involved with the fella with the island. Right. Dino Max says, I live in Canada, and not only it's not perfect, but it's better than what the U.S. has. That is 100% accurate, Dino Mac. Vince says there was a British TikToker on live earlier that said she would rather privatize healthcare. Well, then I doubt that person's ability to get relevant information, or I would doubt their intentions. Potentially, they're getting paid to put that stupid information out there. Maurizio Quezada says, do you think Republicans will ever get a backbone and go against Trump? No, they had an opportunity. They have had many opportunities in the past, and they have fumbled the ball every single fucking time. Ready. Dino Max is not free to pay by taxes. I mean, but it's cheaper than what we currently have, so it's basically free. Colas Blake says, but there is tons of proof saying that Trump was not involved, like Epstein's victims said he wasn't. Collis, that is inaccurate. I do not believe that the things that you are saying are accurate. I am pretty well informed on this issue, so yeah, You can miss me with that nonsense. Please get your news from different sources. Let's see here. Epstein's lawyer said Trump wasn't. Maxwell said he wasn't. Oh, so the liars said Maxwell, who got moved to a cushier prison in exchange for saying that Trump wasn't involved. How interesting that the liar would say that. How about that? Average Joe PG says, just made it in. How you doing today? I'm doing pretty good, Average Joe. How you doing? Daniel Caruso, hey, the Karate Kid himself. Allow healthcare providers to compete in every state. All right. Or we just have universal healthcare. It seems easier to me. Sure, Mexico has free healthcare, but also offers private healthcare to people who want to pay. Mixed system, not bad at all. Badger75 says, would an innocent man hide the evidence? That is an excellent question, Badger75. B-Boy for Life says, have you ever used socialized healthcare? If not, how do you know it's better? I have used socialized healthcare. I was on Medicaid for a bunch of years. And then I got married, and now I have insurance through my wife's corporate job, and it is worse than what I had before. Alrighty, Ace says, how would we get the money out of government? I mean, we just gotta like Democrats. Democrats are the ones trying to get the money out of government. Easiest answer to the question all day. Alrighty, excellent question so far, everybody. Let's see here. Nobody has requested to join the live stream, right? Where are we? Yeah, there's no requests to join, so where are we at? We're at 40 minutes, so we got 20 minutes left at least on this live stream. Let me see what these questions are here. Darren says, have you looked Canada, Mexico, or Canada? Free healthcare is bad. If people want a doctor, they better work. Taryn, that is inaccurate, Taryn. Everybody who lives in Mexico and Canada and then has come to America says that the universal healthcare system is better. The majority of Canadians believe it. The majority of Mexicans believe it. The majority of people in Norway and Switzerland and basically every country in the world that is not America. Maurizio says, who do you think the front runners for the Democratic presidency are? I don't really know. I mean, Gavin Newsom seems like he's got his name out there pretty good. But I'm also not really thinking about 28. I'm thinking about 26. We got to run the table on the midterms, everybody. That is the most important thing. Colin Blake says, I love when I see people that are dishonest. There's nothing better about Canada than the United States. Oh, shit. You've got... All right. See you later, Collis. I don't care for that kind of bullshit in my live stream. Joni Collier says, my son lives in Canada, says it's great healthcare. Completely agree with that. Brendan DTX says, Dems will sweep the midterms. Brendan, they won't unless you and me do the work to help them get elected, Brendan. We can't just sit on our hands and hope that it will magically happen. We need to do the work. That is my message to everybody out there. Do the work. If you go to the link in my bio, you can find my Discord. On my Discord, I've got a thread called The Work. That is what we should all be doing, and we need to recruit other people to do that work as well, because without us, we're fucked, guys. If we don't do the work, we're fucked. All right, let's see here. Average Joe PG says, if you've already covered it, I apologize. Did Greta Thunberg get blown up by Israel today? Oh, I haven't seen that. Ace said that too. Is it true that the boat was hit by a drone? I have no idea. Oh my god, that would be fucking so unbelievably tragic if that happened. Oh my god. Fogworld Productions, good to see you again. Honestly, I'd rather have long wait times than never see a doctor because I can't afford it. Yeah, it's not like we don't have long wait times here in America. You know, I just tried to make an appointment, and I was told that I wouldn't be able to get seen for 3 months, you know, in addition to having to pay a ton of money for it. Marie says that one of the flotillas was hit. Oh, my God. Oh, Cleo with a conscience says, yes, a drone hit, but everyone is okay. Okay, thank goodness for that. Gingy says, why is Israel attacking Qatar now? I just heard. So Israel is emboldened right now to attack anybody that they want to because they know that they can dog walk Trump into continuing to send them money and weapons and to bomb any country that Netanyahu tells Trump to bomb. It is entirely the consequence of having somebody who is more on the side of the Netanyahu government than the American people or the globe in general. And with the Democratic Party, we had politicians who were willing to stand up to Netanyahu. Biden didn't do it enough, but he did do it a little bit, at least, more than fucking Trump is doing, you know? And so, yeah, you know, next time fucking vote for somebody else, everybody. Taryn says, I'm MAGA, but honestly, do you think some ICE agents will get prosecuted? Some arrests are biased. Why are you MAGA, Taryn? It doesn't really seem like a good political philosophy to me. And if you are talking about some of the arrests are biased, like, doesn't that change any of the things that you are thinking about MAGA? Like, doesn't that, you know, isn't that an indicator to you that maybe this political party is not the move, you know? Dusk says, how do you feel about Marxism? I think it is an extremely valuable political philosophy. Ace says, I did a quick search and the headlines are saying, yes, it was hit as of 4 to 9 hours ago. Ant says, next time, get a better barber. I don't know. Everybody here is talking about how great my hair is. So, you know, I guess you can miss me with that nonsense. Alrighty. Thank you, Brendan, for saying I had nice hair immediately before Ant says to get a better barber. Dusk says, valuable how? I think it's valuable in calling out how the rich have been fucking over the working class for a long time. It's valuable in pointing out that it is the workers that create the value, that create the products, and without the workers, the rich would have nobody to make their fucking widgets and shit like that. And it presents a new model. It presents a model for companies being owned by the people that actually do the work. And we see that succeeding wildly here in America with companies like Publix and Bob's Red Mill. Any employee-owned company, they do amazing, you know? And so I think we need a little bit more of that in this country. Ace says, can I have your barber? I don't really have a set barber. I just, you know, I go to this one big place and then I take whoever is available. Stephen Michaels' opinion on the stabbing subway of the Ukrainian. Will Republicans use this for more crime laws? Stephen Michael, Republicans are going to use this. They're going to use this because it was a pretty white woman who was stabbed to death by a black man on public transportation in a city with a Democratic mayor and a Democratic governor. You know, it's so fucking infuriating how they don't give a shit about this woman. They don't give a shit about the people that loved her, who, and what they're going through right now. They're just going to use this as a fucking political football. Meanwhile, you know, we're talking about releasing people from prison who then go on to do worse crimes, while fucking Donald Trump pardons more than 1,000 January 6th insurrectionists who then went on to do worse crimes. And nobody gives a shit about that, I guess. It is just literally, we're just going to cherry pick the pretty white women who get murdered by black men in places where we could blame Democrats for that and ignore every fucking other crime that happens in America. Let's see here. Average Joe PG. I don't know what that reports Israeli sources. Yeah, of course Israel's going to say that. That's fucking bananas. Okay, scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments. Mickey Tankbank says, friendly reminder, the host is paid to read scripts. I am not paid to read scripts. So, and I don't care for that kind of lies on my live stream. So see you later. It's your favorite FR says, you look like handsome. Thank you. I appreciate that I look like handsome. Ah, yes, average Joe Pichi. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Kinscap93 says, when Dems do bad, they are bad. When reps do bad, they're still good. Yeah, Democrats never get any credit. Republicans never get any blame. That is the political reality that we are always living in. Flame Fury says, you Dems do the same every time a black man is killed by a white man. How's your own medicine? That is not true at all, Flame Fury. What are you talking about, man? Ace says, thoughts on Republicans saying getting rid of pew-pews only for trans people? I mean, it is just further evidence of they don't give a shit about actually solving problems. They just want to hurt the groups of people that they don't like. Kirim77 says, we should have elected the Greenhouse Party. No, the Green Party is completely full of shit. The Democratic Party is better. Taryn says, it's not fair for North Carolinians to fear when using the subway. Trump needs to send the National Guard. The National Guard is not going to stop people from getting stabbed on the train, Taryn. The National Guard is not stopping crimes in D.C. They didn't stop any crimes in Los Angeles. It is actually unconstitutional for them to be involved in law enforcement, Taryn. Kay says, it also proves they don't give a shit about the Second Amendment. Yeah, 100% there. Alrighty. Taryn, yeah, I asked you what you liked about MAGA, and you never answered me, so that's pretty interesting. Krim says, if we elect a separate party apart from the main two, we will see how both will react. Yeah, but that other, I mean, there's a lot of problems with that, Krim, you know. Good Citizen says, thoughts on cashless bail. Cashless bail is an attempt to make the justice system more fair, where if you are a millionaire who can afford bail, you don't have to rot in prison waiting for your sentencing. Whereas if you are a poor person and you can't afford bail, then you just have to wait in jail, even if you're completely fucking innocent. Alrighty, let's see here. Garrett McCoppin says, why does 1.70% of the population commit about half the crimes? I don't know what you're talking about, Garrett McCoppin, but I gotta be honest, it sounds like kind of a racist dog whistle. Loki says, coming from someone who doesn't know anything about the military. I mean, I know a little bit. Stephen Michaels, his opinion on foreign policy this week. Things were nuts with Iran and Israel this summer. I mean, it's the same thing every fucking week. It is the Trump administration fucking fumbling the ball, doing dumb shit, ruining our reputation in the world, ruining our economy, giving more assistance to adversarial nations like Russia. It's just so fucking stupid. Alrighty, let's see here. Maurizio Quetzida says, do you think Trump will send the National Guard to Chicago? He's threatening to. I don't know if he will, but he's definitely threatening to. Boo says, what does IYKYK mean? I believe it means if you know, you know. Terrence says, I think it's obvious I like Trump prioritizing our people, don't you? Nobody ever cared about us. Trump doesn't care about you. Taryn, unless you're a billionaire, he does not give a shit about you. Boo says, I'm still waiting for an intelligent comment from you. I've said a lot of them. Notification says, should America end its imperialist policy? Absolutely. Let's see here. Kinscap says, do you think the South Koreans will be released to go home? I believe they will be, but I mean, that relationship is ruined. You know, that is another self-own by the Trump administration. Loki says, look, how about you having a conversation with someone who is in the military? I'm game. Well, I don't know if you were in the military, Loki. I know that you're saying that you are, but you could be lying. And I know plenty of people who were in the military. My father-in-law was in the military. So yeah, you know, you can miss me with that nonsense. Lisa says, where are you going to go if TikTok leaves, changes the terms of service that you can't talk about politics? I mean, I'm already simulcasting on, Twitch and YouTube, so I guess just try to find me there, guys. Let's see here. Jay Jack says, thoughts on what happened in Venezuela? I think it's fucking bananas that the Trump administration just fucking unilaterally murdered a bunch of people. I mean, if a person does a crime, even if they're fucking drug smugglers or human traffickers or whatever, you don't just get to murder them right away, especially if they are foreign nationals. Like, it is not our right to punish people who are citizens of other countries if they are not in our country. You know, like, you can throw somebody in jail if they're a foreign national, then you'd fucking deport them back to their country, usually, where they get held accountable for their crimes or shit like that, you know? I might not be 100% right on that, but you don't just fucking murder people in the middle of the ocean, you know? Alrighty, let's see here. Sharon, do you mean white people? Do you mean that you think the Democratic Party doesn't give shit about white people? Do you think that there's that the Republican Party is taking care of you because you are white? Taryn, that is bananas, man. I gotta be honest, like, that is bananas. Like, that you think that the Democratic Party was discriminating against white people is bananas, my guy. And the fact that you think that being white is going to save you from the negative effects of the Trump administration is also completely fucking bananas, my guy. Yeah, Taryn, blue states do not discriminate against white people, man. I'm not going to block you immediately because you're not calling me a cuck or a liar or anything like that, but goddamn, man. It is just a bummer that you think that. It's a real fucking bummer. FAQ says, you eat bananas for the shape, not the taste. That's not what your mom said to me last night. Let's see here. I'm just going to go ahead and block that dude. All right, we're at 53 minutes, so we got about 7 minutes left in the live stream. Get your questions in. Average Joe PG says, do you think we should call the Green Party the Prairie Dog Party? It only pops its head out every 4 years. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. Let's see here. Ace says, I don't know how Trump won when we saw how life was already like under him, just saying. I mean, people have the memory of a goldfish, and propaganda and misinformation is strong. People forgot. People forgot what it was like to live during COVID and January 6th, and the shit that he was doing, you know. Shork says, why do you think the Green Party is bad? So the Green Party is bad because they are not actually doing the work to become a viable third party. They're not building up any infrastructure at the city and state level. They are not running for local and statewide offices. They are not, all they do is they pop up every 4 years to do these cash grab, ego driven runs for president, and then they dip. They become spoiler candidates and then they dip. And there's a significant amount of evidence to suggest that Jill Stein, the head of the Green Party, is an agent of the Russian government and is specifically running for president every 4 years to fuck the Democratic Party. Ace, Trent says Democrats are communists and liars. That is an example of the kind of comment that gets you blocked. Let's see here. Taryn says, hey man, not trying to root. I just love my people and want the best for us. I love my fellow white people as much as I love my fellow black people and brown people and Asian people and gay people and straight people, Taryn. The Trump administration is not helping you. You know, they're making your costs go up. White people are suffering under inflation and low employment the same way as brown people are. And making brown people suffer is not helping you, my guy. It is not. I don't know what your situation is, my guy, but I'm pretty confident that unless you're a billionaire, you are getting fucked by the Trump administration the same way that me and all my fucking loved ones are. Let's see here. Super Scotty says, why do you think it's becoming a popular among Republicans to get rid of Social Security? It has been a policy of the Republican Party to get rid of everything that helps people, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, shit like that. And so they have just beaten that drum enough, and Trump has become, you know, he has hypnotized his base enough into thinking that even policies that hurt them are good. Boo says, sorry, new listener, what's your opinion of undocumented legal people here in the United States? I can understand how there might be issues with, like, let's say you live on a border town and you are tired of people sneaking through your backyard to get into this country. I can understand that that's an issue. On the net, immigrants are a massive positive for this country. In fact, we need them, I would argue. And so the way that we fix our issues with immigration and undocumented is not by doing what ICE and Trump is doing. It is by doing what Democrats do. And that is hiring more immigration judges, hiring more asylum judges, working with the nations below the border to try to solve the root cause of immigration. Try to fix the process of becoming a citizen, try to streamline it and make it so that it's not just rich people that can do it. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, I believe in solving the problem and not just demonizing immigrants and throwing everybody in jail, cutting off our nose to spite our fucking faces, you know. Alrighty, Aces, why did the Republicans back Trump in the first place? Why didn't they say no from the jump on his first? I mean, he won the primary, you know, and they decided that it would be better to, you know, what do you call it? It would be better to sell their souls than, you know, try to install their own preferred nominee. Maurizio says, do you think ICE is just Trump's private army now? That's how they're acting. Courtney Ricard says, why is Trump getting away with everything? Will there ever be repercussions? So, Courtney, the only way that Trump could get repercussions is if the people who were in charge of the government are not Republicans, because the Republican Party is fully on board with what Trump is doing. They are either fine or more than fine, excited about the corruption and the fascism and the authoritarianism and the unconstitutional behavior and the moral depravity, or they are too scared of him and his increasingly violent base to do anything about it, to stand up to him. So it is up to us. It is up to us to hold Trump accountable by electing the kinds of politicians who will hold him accountable instead of just running cover for him. And right now, the Supreme Court is so far in Trump's pocket, so far up the fucking Republicans' ass, that they're probably going to allow him to run for a third term. If he, you know, if that is even a question, if he doesn't just fucking declare martial law and cancel elections. You know, I forget which Supreme Court justice came out and said it, but they were like, the Supreme Court is currently running like Calvin ball, where there are no rules except whatever helps Donald Trump, you know? So yeah, we got to do the work. We got to do the work. Thank you, Digital Foods. I appreciate you being here. Let's see here. Average Joe PG says they want to privatize the Social Security fund so hedge fund managers can freely trade and profit from it. Yes, that is accurate, Average Joe PG. Alrighty. Courtney Ricard says he will be our last president, sadly, until he's not alive. Not unless we do the work of stopping him, Courtney Ricard. We can do it. If we get a bunch of people to do the work, then we can stop Trump like that. Look at he split. Ghost of Isaac Haynes 79 says, yet that is what the Democratic Socialist Party has been doing for 30 years. What has the Democratic Socialist Party been doing for 30 years? Ghost of Isaac Hayne. I don't believe I'm going to agree with you, but please let me know. Oh, yeah, so Trump derangement symptoms spilling out everywhere, all over social media. Yeah, congratulations, Ghost of Isaac Hayne. You are out of here. So fucking tired of Trump derangement syndrome fucking being gaslighted into thinking that all of my completely legitimate criticisms are somehow just like me being, oh, I'm crazy, you know? Alrighty, Boo says, what do you think about Gavin? Trump can't run again. Who do you want? So Trump is going to try to run again. Boo, like he's not going to sit. He wants to die in office. Like that's his whole fucking thing. Any Democrat is better than Donald Trump. Any Democrat is better than any Republican candidate for president. So I think Gavin's fine. He's not my first choice. He's a little bit more of a centrist than I would care for, but he is extreme. He seems like an extremely winnable kind of candidate. You know, he's doing a great messaging strategy right now against Donald Trump. He's tall, he's handsome, he's straight, he's white, he's a man. You know, a lot of people are going to find that to be a very attractive proposition because, you know, they feel like every time we run a female candidate, the worst person in the world beats them. John Bradley says, do you believe in more of a world without borders, or what is your stance on appropriate nationalism? I've got no problem with countries having borders. You know, let's see here. Chris Skydiving Video says, who is the leader of the Democratic Party, or who should be? I don't think the Democratic Party needs to have a specific leader right now. Yeah, I would like the party leadership to be a little bit more open to the young progressive wing, but also like I don't really care if they don't do that, you know. Magaverse says Newsom seems to be swayable by public opinion. He does. How about that? Alrighty. Let's see here. Alrighty. Ace says thoughts on the Supreme Court saying ICE can detain people because of how they speak or look. Yeah, they do what the Republican Party tells them to do. It's fucking disgusting. They are embarrassments. They are, you know, yeah, you know, they are an embarrassment to other judges and to America. John Bradley says the best punishment for Trump would be silence and for him to go away. His ego couldn't handle it. No, I think the best punishment would be jail. You know. Fire War Productions says, why do we never talk about the Ford administration's involvement in Indonesia? I mean, that just seems like one of many things in our American history that have been memory hold, you know? Let's see here. Scrolling down the bottom. Taryn says, did you say he is white? You also recognize that the next president must be white. Thank you. No, Taryn, no. And gotta be honest, man, you're out of here. Yeah. See you later, buddy. Oy, oy, oy. You know, you try to lead a horse to water, you know? Boo says, what's your opinion of the border wall? It's stupid. It's expensive. It is stealing people's land. It does not work. Sixer says, if we do the work and win, then the Supreme Court overturns it. What do we do? I do not believe that the Supreme Court can overturn legitimate Democratic wins. The kind of like doom casting of that situation is just more of us doing work. Like that's how we solve that problem if it arises. Is we just do more work, you know. Right, Chris Grabbing Diver says central figure AOC Newsom Shapiro. Yeah, I mean they're all party leaders, you know. Ponder Perret says want to see a Democrat future. Watch the. All right, congratulations, Ponder Parrot. You're out of here. Yeah, what about the MAGA guy that fucking assassinated 2 Democratic state senators? How about that? That's the Republican future that we're currently living under. How about going to the grocery store and not being able to afford food? How about not having a fucking hospital anymore in your rural town? That is the Republican world that we are currently living in, you know? Dave Smith says, Taryn sounds racist. Yeah, we figured that a while ago. We were trying to, you know, get him to recognize, you know, that is not the Jesus way, you know? Digital Food says, so many people call a centrist like Newsom an extreme leftist so ignorant. Yep, accurate, Digital Foods. Let's see here. Short says, why hasn't Trump stopped funding Ukraine if his primary goal is a ceasefire now? That is a really good question, actually. My theory on that is that there are too many hands in the pot. Too many people make too much money from continuing to send weapons to Ukraine. And so all of his billionaire buddies over at fucking Raytheon and Boeing who are making bombs and jets and shit like that, they want him to continue sending the weapons over there. And so he's going to continue to do it, you know? John Bradley says, don't you think Trump being in jail would make him a martyr? More attention equals more power for him. Yeah, but he would be in jail, and that would be nice. Yeah, and he's not going to be alive long to be a martyr for, you know. Anthony Delaretto says, always remember if Donald Trump's lips are moving, he's lying. That is accurate. John Bradley, I know you're a good guy. Let's see here. Ace says, will we get a Nuremberg trial, but the American version, if we elect enough Democrats and the right Democrats, you know. Let's see here. Taggerit says they put Bolsonaro in jail. Why not Trump? Because the Republican Party decided not to hold Trump accountable for any of his fucking crimes. Ace says, how would we get term limits on the Supreme Court? We need to elect exactly the kind of politicians that are down with passing that kind of legislation, aka Democrats. Mauricio Gedzita says, but why doesn't Trump put more tariffs on Russia? I believe he did put more tariffs on Russia. I think he's mad at Putin for not being quieter about taking over Ukraine and doing it so, so blatantly. All right, everybody. Let's see here. MAGA was reversed. They can't decide the outcome. No, he didn't last I checked, says Maurice, MAGA verse. I mean, he threatens to. In addition to being an idiot and incompetent, he is also a weenie. So he will talk big and say he's going to do things to Russia to make them pay for what the way that they're acting, and they're not trying to do a ceasefire, and then he will back down immediately. Trump always chickens out. Taco, right? Yeah. All right, everybody. Get in your final questions. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. DMs are open. Email me through my website. Check out my Discord. Get in touch. The project of unelecting every Republican does not stop for me when the live stream stops. So if I can be a resource for you guys to be part of that crusade as well, fucking use me until you use me up. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I've got a Patreon that you can find on my website. You can join for as little as $1. I've got a store on my website that you can buy things from. You can send gifts on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and subscribe, and all that stuff helps me out a ton. And lastly, just my heartfelt plea for all of you guys to do the work and recruit other people to do the work, because if we don't do the work, then we're fucked. John Bradley says, thoughts on Mamdani. I like him a lot, and I need people to recognize that the billionaire class is not going to stop trying to fuck with him. They're gonna fuck with him leading up to the election. They're gonna fuck with him after he wins. They are going to fund op-eds about how he is ineffective and socialism can't work and shit like that. He's going to try to turn the city of New York against Mamdani the same way that they turned the city against Bill de Blasio. If you support Mamdani, you got to keep supporting him. Yeah, Digital Foods. Yeah, I've been thinking about that Bill Withers song, because if it feels this good getting used, then just keep on use me until you use me up. Alrighty. Dane says, you are well-rounded and educated. Nice to listen to. Thank you, Dane. I appreciate you being here. Shork says, have Republicans made any progress toward Project 2025? I believe the people that have calculated that has said that it is 2/3 accomplished. They have done 2/3 of Project 2025 at this point. Fogger War Productions says, I feel like we backed Trump because we were sick of Bush, but went too far the other way. I don't know. People write entire books about the rise of Trump. There's 1,000 different motivations and causes. It's a fucking quagmire. K-Rock says, what does this have to do with keeping men out of women's sports? I don't know, K-Rock. I care way more about making sure that you can put food on the table and be able to afford healthcare than I give a shit about policing, checking children's genitals before they are allowed to go play softball or some shit like that. Alrighty. They are afraid of politicians that care to the actual public. That is accurate. Let's see here. Kim Berlina says, your Republican dad said the Department of Justice is pursuing criminal charges on Doge findings, can't find anything. So I'm not 100% sure how to respond to that, Kimberlina, because I think the main point is in recognizing that the Department of Justice right now is no longer a legitimate agency. They have stopped just upholding the rule of law and instead are a tool of Trump and his vengeance. They don't give a shit about pursuing people that do crimes. They only want to persecute Trump's enemies and the people that say negative things about him. So if the DOJ are pursuing criminal charges based on Doge findings. They may be doing that, they may not be doing that, but you cannot take it as legitimate anymore. You know, they have proven that they are no longer legitimate. And so, yeah, you know, they're going to tell you that they found evidence that, you know, Barack Obama murdered JFK, you know, and yeah, it's just all bullshit, you know, and it's a real fucking bummer. I would love to be able to trust my Department of Justice at least a little bit, you know. Garrett McCubbin says, no facts, just rapid opinions. No, I give tons of facts, Garrett. I think you just choose to ignore them. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the support, the questions and the comments and everything. John D says, what do you think about Donald Trump Jr. being appointed as strategic advisor to the MMA? Is he qualified? I have no idea if Donald Trump Jr. has any MMA experience, but I do think that he is a real fucking piece of shit. All right, everybody, do the work, everybody, and recruit other people to do the work. If you don't know what the work is, go to my Discord. There was a thread posted called The Work. And be good to each other, be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.